I recently watched Echo because I was curious if it kind of like informed Kingpin's character in Daredevil Born Again, and if they did anything interesting with him. And it's only 5 episodes, so I was like, yeah, sure, whatever. I'll give it a shot. And I kind of liked it. I think it's doing a lot of fun and interesting things. However, at the same time, I don't think it's necessary, which is fine, but it also just felt kind of, I don't know. So apparently, as I was looking into this, they originally shot it to be 8 or 9 episodes, I think. And then it got like reshot and way condensed all the way down to 5, which is like a pretty big difference. And you can kind of tell, I think, the way the last episode like wraps up, it just kind of like shoehorns all the major characters into like one location, and then it's like, and then the good guys beat the bad guys, the end. And you're like, okay, I'm not sure what happened exactly, and I'm not even sure the characters fully understand what happened, but I guess that counts as a resolution. Okay then. So I was a little disappointed by the end of the show, but I was initially hooked by the first couple episodes, which I thought were really solid. The first episode like recaps Echo's origin, which we got some of in Hawkeye, but we see events now more from her perspective, and we flesh things out a little bit more and see like a little bit of how she ended up working for Kingpin. And I actually really liked that. It felt a lot like how comics will recap events from different story arcs by just straight up telling you, oh yeah, this happened that one time when I met this character, and like literally just re-showing you events from a different comic that you might not have read. It felt like that. We got like literally just clips from Hawkeye, but it made sense in context to show them because they inform Echo's story and her character development. So I actually really liked how they did all that stuff. We get a actually very cool one-take fight sequence, which is kind of better than the one in Daredevil Born Again. It's not on the same level as the ones from the original Daredevil show. The hidden cuts are a little bit more obvious, but it is still quality, and they even do some cool stuff with the sound design and the editing. We see Echo like go through a full arc during the fight, where this is her like first mission that she's going on for the Kingpin, and she has this like rage inside of her because her dad was killed by Hawkeye or whatever happened in that show, and initially she's not like really that invested in fighting these rival criminals or whatever it is, and then she decides, fuck it, I'm gonna take out my anger on these guys, and gets like really into it, and it's cool. I liked it. And then Daredevil showed up out of nowhere, and they have a little cool fight, and that's your Daredevil cameo for the whole show. But I actually kind of liked that. Like, this is the thing that I think they should kind of be leaning into more with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is do things more like the comics, where sometimes a character in the comics will just show up for like half an issue, and then that's it, and then we don't see them again, and it's not relevant because like it's just a lived-in world, and sometimes characters meet and they don't necessarily have a full arc. They're just like, oh look, it's that one guy, I wonder what adventures he's up to over there, and that's it. And I actually kind of like it. Sure, it was like a little bit annoying at the time when like Daredevil kept having cameos and stuff, and then years later he finally gets his own show again. But I like seeing Charlie Cox's Daredevil, so I'll take it. And the fight was kind of cool, so I'm okay with it. I kind of like it. And this show also does a lot of interesting and unique things that very few, if not no other shows are doing. It's about a deaf, half Mexican American, half Native American badass fighter girl with one leg. Name any other character that fits that description. On one hand, it does feel a little bit like Disney's trying to get the most diversity points by hitting several different boxes. But on the other hand, like, so what? We get to have a show that's like primarily Native American cast that's also kind of connected to a mainstream Disney thing. Like, how many other shows are like that? Very few. We get to have a show that's like primarily focused on a deaf main character, and pretty much every character in the show is sort of like close family and friends, so they all know sign. So we get like many scenes of characters just fully speaking in sign language, which is cool. There's very few other things that do that. I guess you got the A Quiet Place movies, or 2 out of 3 of them, and you got like Coda, and that's like mostly it. There's probably some other stuff, and there's definitely been more in the last like 10 years or so than there has in previous decades, but it's still very few. So it's kind of cool that like you have a show that gets to do that. And also, I feel like it's just off of Disney's main radar enough that they're like not really messing with it too much, and they could kind of do whatever they wanted. So there's a lot of time spent on like diving into Native American culture and mythology and their history. There's a lot of time spent in like actual on location shoots and doing like a full big powwow and showing the culture and the music and everything about it. And I thought all that stuff was kind of cool. They do a lot of really interesting things with like the sound design, because Echo is deaf, of course. So we get a lot of scenes directly from her perspective where things have to be told completely visually. And there's a lot of sequences where they cut out the sound entirely and we just are from Echo's perspective. So all we hear in the soundtrack is her heartbeat, which is really cool. There's a moment later on in the big like powwow sequence where she's like dancing along with the rest of the Native American community there, and at first she's not quite in sync with everyone else, but then like as she kind of focuses on the drum beat, which in Native culture, from what I understand, and all is also the same in a lot of different cultures, the drum beat represents like the heartbeat, and so like as she starts to focus on that, her heartbeat starts to synchronize with the drum beat, and it's like her accepting and becoming part of her culture and her family and stuff. It's really cool, and it's all told just through that really simple idea. And it's a real thing too. If you're ever listening to music and you're getting like really into it, part of that is because your heartbeat actually does start to synchronize to the beats per minute of whatever song you're listening to. I don't even know the science of why that happens, but it's like, it's very cool, and it makes sense why the drum beat and like the beat of your heart are often like considered to be spiritually connected in some way. It's like, it makes sense why music is like a really big part of so many different religions when you think about it. So I liked and that's just like a really subtle detail that they threw in there. It felt to me like they did a lot of work to really get Native American culture right, but also like sign language culture right. And one thing I noticed that I thought was really cool is like different characters will speak slightly differently with sign language depending on like the level that they've learned it. So like the older grandpa character, he speaks really slowly with sign, and he also speaks out loud and does the signing at the same time. So you can tell he's like really thinking carefully about what he says, versus some of the other characters that will do it more faster, or they'll just do the sign because they're like more confident in it. All that stuff I thought was really, really interesting and cool to see. But at the same time, I feel like Echo herself is not as interesting in this show as she was in Hawkeye. And that's mostly just because she's like, outside of being a cool badass who's deaf and Native American and drives a motorcycle and only has one leg, all kind of aesthetic things, there's not much to her. Like, she's kind of just a stoic badass who's more stoic than your normal stoic badass because she's deaf. And that's kind of it. Like, one of the things I thought was interesting about that in Hawkeye was she was just this cool side character who showed up for a few episodes, had a compelling backstory, which they were able to even show us because it's a show and you can how you could take time to just flesh out one of your side characters enough to get invested in them, and then that's kind of, you know, enough to get their vibe, and that's it. She's just cool and is like a character that Hawkeye has to contend with. I thought that she had a more interesting relationship with Hawkeye too, because he is hard of hearing. So he's like starting to lose his hearing. He knows a little bit of sign language, but he's not nearly as skilled as she is. And so he can speak with her, but he's like not on the same level that she is. And she had like very interesting perspective on his disability versus hers, where she's like, you shouldn't be using your hearing aid like that's a crutch. You're the way that you're thinking about your disability, you're thinking of it as a weakness. If you lean too much on that, then you're going to rely on that, and you're not going to think of all the ways that this is actually a strength. Like, very interesting like perspective that she had, and that like their relationship I thought was just really interesting. It's also interesting because she's like placed in a world where most other characters don't understand her, so she has to like really fight to be heard. In Echo, the show, she goes back to her hometown where she has to like reconnect with her family and her culture and stuff. And so she's interacting with like her close friends and family who all know sign already. We even learned that her mom was also deaf. And so like all of her family pretty much already knew sign language before Echo even came around. So she grew up like in this like very accepting community. And it's only later in life that she had to like fight to be heard and understood. So I don't know, I'm on like two sides of the fence on this. One, I do think it is kind of nice to have a show that's all like Native American cast, all constantly doing sign language, because how many other shows are like that? And there is something kind of like welcoming and nice about having that be like just part of the show. At the same time, like I feel like because everyone is like on board with being friends with Echo, she doesn't have really many hurdles except for like only internally. And maybe that's the point. Maybe I'm being an asshole because I'm like, the show about sign language should be all about how it's hard to communicate, but it's like about other things instead, and it's like that's almost like not a factor. I don't know. It's the like, should the show about disabilities be about the disability, or should it be a show about family that happens to feature characters with a disability? Like that's, I guess, and I don't have the answer to that. I just think it was kind of more interesting when she was like a one-off cool side villain character that just had a cool perspective and unique look and abilities, versus when like it's all about her family or whatever. So I don't know, I think the show's doing a lot of cool and interesting things, and again, it's refreshing and kind of nice to have this different perspective and this different show, because how many other fucking shows actually commit to being like entirely Native American cast, and so much of the dialogue is done in sign language? Very, very few. So I think that's kind of cool. At the same time, I don't know if like Echo as a character like learned or grew that much on me, outside of like I like the actress a lot and I think she's cool, but I don't know if I think more about her than that. And yeah, I think some of the stuff with Kingpin towards the end was kind of sloppy and not that satisfying. Like I definitely don't watch this show for Kingpin, which is sort of what I did. He's in 3 episodes of the 5, which is not a lot. And also he got like shot in the face at the end of Hawkeye, and they don't really explain how he survived. He just has like a small bandage over his one eye, and then he just gets better, and that's kind of it. Like he has like a magic sci-fi healing bandage over his eye at one point, but they don't explain like how he survived a bullet in the face. He just did, and he didn't even lose an eye or anything. He's okay. And so if you're wondering how did he survive that, you're gonna still be wondering that. We don't learn how, we just learned that he did. Okay. Overall, probably an underrated show. Again, I think it was just like obscure enough that Marvel wasn't paying that close attention, and so they could kind of do whatever they felt like with it. So in some ways, I think that's kind of fun. It's also only 5 episodes, which is in some ways kind of nice because it's like doesn't waste too much of your time. But on the other hand, like it came after like a wave of like several mediocre Marvel shows, and they just kept announcing more, and it was like, really, a Hawkeye spinoff? Is that what we want? Is that what we need? So I absolutely understand skipping this one. Yeah, I don't know if I'd recommend it. I think it depends on how you're feeling. Do you want to watch a show with like a couple pretty good action scenes? Like there was a cool action scene in this like roller rink arcade. I liked that. I thought that was cool. And some good deaf representation and good Native American representation and not much to it, then maybe check it out, I guess. I don't know. Or if you want to watch a one-take fight sequence that's better than the one in Daredevil Born Again, I don't know, maybe watch the first episode or something. I think that's it. Those are my thoughts on Echo. What did you think? Did you watch Echo? Do you remember that came out? Let me know. That's this video.